from sick leave to cybersecurity and driver's licenses for nearly 1.5 million immigrants in California. My guest, attorney Dan Eaton, joins us with analysis of a handful of new state laws. And Dan, starting January 2nd, more than 1 million immigrants living in California without documentation will be eligible to apply for a driver's license and get one. How are their licenses, or how would these licenses be different than, let's say, ones you and I would get?
Well, two distinctions. One, they're going to be marked with a different code, like DP or something like that, as opposed to the identification that we have. And it'll also say it's not valid for federal purposes. That's going to be the distinction in the license that they get from the one that we get.
And it can't be used that not for federal purposes, meaning they can't, if they're pulled over and they have to show their license, immigration wouldn't be called, right?
Well, that's the idea, that they can't be used for law enforcement purposes and so forth, but the idea that it can't be used for federal purposes means that the undocumented immigrant couldn't use it to get federal benefits. I think that's what they're really talking about, and it's very important that you understand that it will be clear and easy to identify who has these licenses, these special AB 60 licenses.
And how do you think this will impact the state? I mean, is the DMV really ready to handle this influx of 1.5 million more people?
Well, you certainly hope so. Now, that's obviously an easy opening for a joke about the DMV, which we shouldn't do, because they really have wonderful information on their website about this. And the bottom line is, as far as the impact on the state, Peggy, is it's going to make our roads safer, because according to findings cited by the legislature, 1 in 5 fatal accidents are the result of unlicensed drivers. And the people who get these licenses will still have to have all of the training and pass all the tests that we have to pass to get a license. And that's going to make the roadways safer.
But it's going to cost some money. How is it going to be paid for?
It is going to cost some money, but the DMV is specifically allowed under the new law to assess a fee to recoup some of those costs.
And that'll go to the people applying for those licenses, correct?
Well, it'll go to the state. That they will have to pay it, but it will go to the state.
Now, San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez actually authored California's new sick leave law that actually, I understand, starts to go into effect in January?
It actually does. The interesting thing is, of course, everybody is focusing on the July 1st date when people can start accruing or earning this new sick leave. But in fact, there are some legal obligations that go into effect on January 1st, including the obligation of all employers to notify their employees of the fact that they have these rights and they can't be retaliated against for exercising those rights.
Who's eligible as far as which employees, and how many sick days will they get?
All employees are eligible. In fact, even employees who don't normally work here in California are eligible as long as they work at least 30 days in the state of California. As far as how many days, people will earn 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. And in fact, the law mandates up to 3 days of paid sick leave or 24 hours of paid sick leave.
I want to talk something that's a little bit more disturbing about this national report on campus sexual assaults this year. We all heard about it. We've heard lots of stories about this. And the new so-called yes means yes law that takes effect in the new year. What is this yes means yes law?
Well, yes means yes, Peggy, will require both parties to sexual activity to show affirmative, conscious, voluntary consent to sexual activity. And by the way, that's ongoing consent that has to be established. In other words, it can be revoked at any time in the course of the sexual activity. So instead of no means no, there has to be an ongoing yes to the sexual activity throughout the whole course of the sexual activity, and silence alone will not do it.
So somebody who's passed out, obviously, you can't use that as an excuse.
Or, not to get too graphic, but moaning won't do it, which was actually what Jameis Winston, the Florida State quarterback, said, how he established consent. That's not going to be enough. Yes means yes.
What does this law also mean? It requires California universities to also do something. What does it require?
It does. It requires them to establish a whole bunch of different policies, but it also requires them to do outreach, and outreach to various community groups that engage in victim assistance and also legal assistance, not just for the accuser, but also to the accused. And as far as the outreach goes, this outreach must be included in new student orientation.
Well, we'll have to wrap on this. The recent Sony Pictures breach was unnerving on so many levels, but once again brings to mind a cybersecurity for consumers. There's a new data breach law on the books. What does that do for us?
It expands the people who have to use reasonable security precautions to include those who actually maintain it, not just those who sell it. So this is very important. And remember, we also had holiday retailer breaches last year. So this is going to be some important protection. And you get free identity theft protection if there is a data breach.
So they have to report it to you. If something happened to my security, the company would have to report it to me.
Got to be reported to you, and they've got to give you 12 months of free identity theft protection.
All right, Attorney Dan Eaton, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.